My wife said, "It's just a charity gala." I replied, "Do good." Then I found their weekend booking attached to the event. I canceled everything and sent the evidence to the sponsors. 48 hours later, she wasn't invited on stage. She was the headline of the evening gossip. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this whole electrical storm started. My name's Dean Parrish, and I've been married to Beth for 17 years. We own Parrish Power and Lighting together with my brother John. Well, technically, my mother Ruth owns the controlling shares, but we run the day-to-day operations. In this family, loyalty's like an expired coupon. Looks good, worth nothing. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I first noticed the signs. Beth was at the kitchen island, phone pressed to her ear, whispering like she was planning a CIA operation instead of organizing another one of her charity events. No, the reservation needs to be under Johnson, she was saying, twirling her blonde hair around her finger. 2 rooms, adjoining if possible. I poured my coffee and raised an eyebrow. Johnson? Since when do you use fake names for charity work? Beth's face flushed pink. It's not fake, Dean. It's discretionary. Some donors prefer privacy. Right. I took a long sip. Because nothing says helping orphans like secret hotel bookings. She rolled her eyes and walked away, still whispering into the phone. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. After 17 years of marriage, you learn to read the signs. Beth only got secretive about 2 things: surprise parties and affairs. And it wasn't my birthday. The next few days were like watching a bad soap opera, except I was living in it. Beth would disappear for hours, claiming she was meeting with committee members. She'd come home smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine, something expensive and woody that reminded me of my brother John's office. Speaking of John, he'd been acting strange too. Normally, he'd call me 3 times a day about work stuff. Suddenly, he was handling everything through Carl Robertson, our VP, or Mary and Joanne, our executive assistants. Your brother's been real quiet lately, Mary mentioned on Thursday, filing her nails at her desk. Usually can't shut him up about his latest conquest. Maybe he's finally learned some discretion, I said, but something cold was settling in my stomach. That evening, I decided to do some detective work. Beth was in the shower, singing off key like she always did when she was happy about something. I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. The password was still B and Bree 2007, the year our daughters were born. Some things never change, even when everything else is falling apart. I scrolled through her messages, and there it was, a thread with someone named Jay. Jay. Can't wait for this weekend. Finally get you all to myself. Beth. I know. I feel terrible lying to Dean, but... Jay. He doesn't appreciate you like I do. Never has. Beth. Saturday can't come fast enough. I kept reading, my hands shaking slightly. The messages went back weeks. Intimate details, plans, promises. And then I saw it. The hotel confirmation. The Grandview Resort, presidential suite, Saturday through Monday. Charged to the charity's credit card. That's when I heard the shower turn off. I quickly put the phone back and pretended to be reading a electrical contractor magazine. Beth emerged in her bathrobe, humming that same off-key tune. You seem happy, I said, not looking up from an article about voltage regulators. Just excited about the gala, she said, sitting at her vanity to brush her hair. It's going to be our biggest fundraiser yet. I'm sure it will be memorable, I replied, and I meant every word. The next morning, Beth left early for a final committee meeting. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then called the Grandview Resort. Hi, this is Dean Johnson, I said, using the fake name I'd heard Beth mention. I need to cancel my reservation for this weekend. Of course, Mr. Johnson. The presidential suite for Saturday through Monday? That's the one. I'll need to verify some information. The reservation was made by a Beth Parrish? My wife, I confirmed. We've had a family emergency. I'm so sorry to hear that. The cancellation is processed. Will there be any penalty fees charged to the charity account? No penalty fees, I said. And actually, could you send me a copy of the original booking confirmation for our records? Absolutely. What email should I use? I gave them my personal email, then hung up and stared at the phone. A charity account. She was using charity money to fund her affair. 20 minutes later, I had the confirmation in my inbox. Beth Parrish and John Parrish, presidential suite, romantic package, including champagne and couples massage. John Parrish, my own brother. I sat in my home office for a long time, staring at that email. Outside, I could hear our neighbors mowing their lawns, kids playing in the street, normal Saturday sounds in our quiet subdivision. Everything looked the same, but my world had just shifted off its axis. When Beth came home that afternoon, she was practically glowing. "The gala's going to be perfect," she announced, dropping shopping bags in the foyer. "I found the most beautiful dress. You're going to love it." "I can't wait to see it," I said. And I meant that too, just not in the way she thought. That evening at dinner, our daughters Bea and Bree seemed unusually quiet. 15 and 13 respectively, they were normally chattering about school, friends, sports. Tonight they just pushed food around their plates. "Everything okay, girls?" I asked. Bea, the older one, glanced at her mother, then back at her plate. "Yeah, Dad. Just tired." But I caught the look that passed between them. They knew something. After dinner, while Beth was on another committee call, I cornered Bea in the living room. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" I asked, sitting beside her on the couch. She was quiet for a long moment, then, "Dad, do you ever wonder if Mom's really at all those charity meetings?" My heart sank. "What makes you ask that?" "I saw her at the mall last week with Uncle John. They were holding hands." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. "Are you sure?" Bea nodded, tears starting to form. "Bree saw them too. We didn't know if we should tell you." I pulled her into a hug. "You did the right thing telling me now." "Are you going to divorce her?" Bree's voice came from the doorway. She'd been listening. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But whatever happens, you two are my priority. Always." That night, I lay in bed next to Beth, listening to her breathe. She was sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about her romantic weekend with my brother. I stared at the ceiling and planned my next move. In this business, timing is everything. Wire the circuits wrong, flip the switch too early, and you'll blow the whole system. But get the sequence right, and you can light up the world. Or burn it down. Saturday morning arrived with Beth practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. She spent 3 hours getting ready for the charity gala, trying on different jewelry, redoing her makeup twice. "How do I look?" she asked, twirling in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Like $1 million, I said. "Hope the charity appreciates the investment." She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark. "You're the best husband ever, Dean. I'm so lucky." The irony was so thick you could cut it with wire strippers. After she left, I got to work. I'd spent Friday evening crafting emails to every major donor, sponsor, and board member of the Children's Hope Foundation. Nothing dramatic, just a simple message with the hotel booking confirmation attached. "I thought you should be aware of how your charitable donations are being utilized. Please see attached documentation of expenses charged to the foundation's corporate account. A concerned donor." I sent them all at 2 p.m., exactly 1 hour before the gala started. Then I called my daughters. "Want to crash a party?" Bea raised an eyebrow. "Mom's charity thing?" "Trust me, it'll be educational." We arrived at the Grandview Hotel just as cocktail hour was ending. The ballroom was packed with the city's social elite, everyone dressed to the nines, champagne glasses glittering under crystal chandeliers. I spotted Beth immediately. She was standing near the auction tables with John, both of them laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. They looked comfortable together, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. "There's Uncle John," Bree said, following my gaze. "Yeah," I said. "There he is." We made our way through the crowd. I nodded to people I recognized, clients, business associates, neighbors. Several of them gave me odd looks, like they knew something I didn't, which, technically, they now did. Margaret Hensley, the foundation's president, was at the podium preparing to start the program. She caught my eye across the room, and her expression was complicated, angry, embarrassed, disappointed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Margaret began, her voice carrying over the crowd, "thank you all for joining us tonight for what was supposed to be our annual celebration of community giving. Was supposed to be. Past tense. This was going to be good. However, it has come to our attention that there have been some irregularities in how foundation funds have been managed." The room went quiet. Beth's face had gone pale. "Due to these concerns, we will be conducting a full financial audit before proceeding with tonight's planned activities." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I watched Beth grab John's arm, her knuckles white. "Mom looks sick," Bea whispered. "She should," I replied. Margaret continued, "We want to assure all donors that any misappropriated funds will be recovered and proper oversight will be implemented going forward." That's when Beth noticed us. Her eyes went wide, like a deer caught in headlights. She started walking toward us, John trailing behind. "Dean!" Her voice was too bright, too loud. "What are you doing here? I thought you had that electrical emergency to handle." "Emergencies resolved," I said calmly. "Decided to come support my wife's charitable efforts." John stepped up beside her, and I got a good look at my brother. 2 years older than me, always the smooth talker, always the one who got what he wanted. Not tonight. "Hey, little brother," he said, but his usual cocky smile was strained. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I bet you didn't." The crowd was starting to disperse, conversations buzzing with speculation. Several people were staring at us now, putting pieces together. "Can we talk?" Beth said, grabbing my arm. "Privately?" "Sure," I said. "But first, I'm curious about something. Margaret mentioned misappropriated funds. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Beth's face went from pale to red. "Dean, please, not here." "Where then?" "Your romantic weekend getaway?" "Oh, wait, that got canceled." John stepped closer. "What the hell are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed them both the hotel confirmation email. Presidential suite, couples massage, champagne package, all charged to the charity account. Beth made a small choking sound. "You bastard," John muttered without force. "Careful," I replied. Since we've got the same mother, that insult bounces right back. People were definitely staring now. I could see phones coming out, probably recording. In 30 minutes, this would be all over social media. "Daddy?" Bree tugged on my sleeve. "Can we go home?" "In a minute, sweetheart." I looked at Beth, who had tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "Anything you want to say? Any explanation for how charity money ended up paying for your affair with my brother?" "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Really? Because I think you've been screwing my business partner while using donations meant for children to fund your hotel rooms. Am I wrong?" The silence stretched out. Around us, the gala was effectively over. Donors were leaving, staff were cleaning up, and my marriage was dying a very public death. "How long?" I asked. "Dean," John started. "Not you, her. How long?" Beth wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. 6 months. 6 months. I nodded. "And the charity account?" "Just this once. I was going to pay it back." "With what money?" "The money from our joint accounts? The accounts I work 60-hour weeks to fill?" She didn't answer. I looked at John. Anything to add? My brother, my business partner, The man I'd trusted with half my livelihood just stared at the floor. Right. I took my daughter's hands. Girls, say goodbye to your mother. We're going home. Dean, wait, Beth called as we walked away. We need to talk about this. I turned back. No, we don't. We need to talk to lawyers. Big difference. As we reached the hotel lobby, B looked up at me. Dad, are you okay? I will be, I said. And for the first time in days, I meant it. The drive home was quiet. Both girls seemed lost in thought, processing what they'd witnessed. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed John's Mercedes wasn't in his usual spot at his house across the street, probably still at the hotel dealing with the fallout. Dad? Bree said as we walked to the front door. What happens now? Now we figure out how to move forward, I said. Together. Inside, I made hot chocolate while the girls changed into pajamas. We sat in the living room and I tried to explain things in terms they could understand. Your mom made some bad choices, I said. And so did Uncle John. Sometimes adults do things that hurt the people they're supposed to love most. Are you going to get divorced? B asked. Probably. Will we have to move? Not if I can help it. Will Uncle John still be our uncle? That one was harder. He'll always be family, but things are going to be different now. We talked for another hour until both girls were yawning. After I tucked them in, I went to my home office and started making lists, lawyers to call, accounts to secure, business partnerships to untangle. Around midnight, I heard Beth's car in the driveway. The front door opened quietly. She was trying not to wake anyone. I met her in the foyer. How bad is it? I asked. She'd been crying. Her expensive dress was wrinkled, her hair messed up. The foundation fired me. Margaret says they might press charges. Criminal charges? Misappropriation of funds, even though it was only $800. $800 that wasn't yours. She nodded miserably. Dean, I'm so sorry. I know how this looks, but what? You accidentally had an affair? You accidentally used charity money for your romantic getaway? I never meant for it to go this far. Which part? The affair or the embezzlement? She flinched. Both. I studied her face. This woman I'd loved for 17 years, mother of my children, partner in building our life together. She looked small and broken, nothing like the confident socialite who'd left for the gala that morning. Where's John? I asked. I don't know. He left after everything fell apart. Probably smart. If he'd come here tonight, I might have done something we'd both regret. What happens now? I was quiet for a long moment. Now, you sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, we start figuring out how to split up 17 years of marriage. She started crying again. I love you, Dean. I know you don't believe that, but I do. No, I said. You love the life I gave you. The house, the status, the security. You love what I provide, not who I am. That's not true. If it wasn't true, you wouldn't have been planning a romantic weekend with my brother while I was working 12-hour days to pay for your charity dress. She had no answer for that. I went upstairs, leaving her standing in the foyer. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Carl Robertson. Heard about tonight. John called an emergency board meeting for Monday. Thought you should know. I typed back, thanks. See you Monday. An emergency board meeting. John was making his move, probably trying to push me out of the company before I could do the same to him. He was about to learn that I didn't get where I am by being the nice brother. In this family, I might be the younger son, but I'm the one who actually knows how to run a business, and I'm definitely the one who knows where all the bodies are buried. Monday was going to be very interesting. Monday morning came with storm clouds gathering outside and a different kind of storm brewing inside Parish Power and Lighting. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., to find John's Mercedes already in the parking lot. Mary looked up from her desk as I walked in. "He's been here since 5:30, she said. "Changed the security codes on the main office and the equipment room." "Did he now?" I set my coffee down and smiled. "That's interesting. Carl's in your office. He's not happy." I found Carl pacing behind my desk, his usually calm demeanor replaced with barely controlled anger. "That dude locked us out of the financial systems," he said without preamble. "Claims he's protecting company assets during a transition period." "Transition to what?" "He wants you out, Dean. Says you're a liability after the charity scandal." I laughed. "The charity scandal that his affair caused?" "Apparently, he's spinning it differently. Says you orchestrated the whole thing to embarrass Beth and damage the company's reputation." Creative. I sat down in my chair and powered up my computer. "Good thing I know all the override codes." "He changed those too. He changed the ones he knows about." I opened a hidden panel under my desk and pulled out a laptop. But John never was the technical one in this family. 20 minutes later, I had full access to everything. Company finances, client contracts, project schedules, employee records. Everything John thought he'd locked me out of. "How?" Carl asked, looking over my shoulder. "I designed these systems. You think I'd build them without a back door?" The first thing I checked was our current projects. John had 3 major contracts running: a new shopping center, a hospital renovation, and a residential development. All of them were behind schedule and over budget. The second thing I checked was our client communications. John had been promising completion dates that were physically impossible and making commitments we couldn't keep. The third thing I found made me smile for the first time in days. "Carl, look at this." I pointed to a series of purchase orders. "John's been ordering premium materials and charging premium prices, but the delivery receipts show standard grade equipment." Carl leaned closer. "He's pocketing the difference?" "Looks like it. About $40,000 over the past 6 months. That's embezzlement. It's creative accounting. Probably not criminal, but definitely grounds for removal as a partner." My phone rang. John's extension. "Dean, we need to talk." My brother's voice was tight with stress. "Sure. Your office or mine?" "Conference room. 10 minutes." I hung up and looked at Carl. "Round up Mary and Joanne. I want witnesses." The conference room felt different with battle lines drawn. John sat at the head of the table like he owned the place, which technically he partially did, but so did I, and more importantly, so did our mother. "This is difficult for all of us," John began, his smooth salesman voice in full effect. "But we need to address the elephant in the room." "Which elephant would that be?" I asked. "Your affair with my wife, or your creative bookkeeping?" His composure slipped for just a second. "Dean, I know you're upset." "Upset?" I laughed. "John, upset is when someone cuts you off in traffic. This is something else entirely. What happened between Beth and me? It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. But you did mean to use charity money to fund it. That was Beth's idea." "Ah, so you're throwing her under the bus now?" Carl cleared his throat. "Maybe we should focus on business matters." "Good idea." I opened my laptop and turned it toward John. "Want to explain these purchase orders?" John's face went pale as he scrolled through the documents. "These are routine material purchases. For premium copper wire that was never delivered, you've been substituting standard grade and keeping the price difference." That's not accurate." "It's completely accurate. I have delivery receipts, installation photos, and quality control reports. You've been defrauding our clients for months." Mary and Joanne exchanged glances. They'd been with the company for 15 years and knew every detail of our operations. "The Henderson project," Mary said quietly. "John specifically told me not to include the material specs in the final report." "And the hospital job," Joanne added. "He handled all the supplier communications directly instead of going through normal channels." John stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're all ganging up on me because you're mad about Beth. No, I said, standing to face him. We're holding you accountable because you've been stealing from our clients while screwing my wife. There's a difference. I want you out, John said. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. On what grounds? Erratic behavior, emotional instability, damage to company reputation. I smiled. You want to play that game? Fine. Carl, please read the partnership agreement, section 12. Carl pulled out a thick folder. Any partner engaging in activities that materially damage the company's financial interests or reputation may be removed by majority vote of the board. And who's on the board? I asked. Ruth Parrish, Dean Parrish, John Parrish, and Carl Robertson as VP. So we need 3 votes. I vote to remove John for embezzlement and conduct detrimental to the company. Carl? I second the motion. John's face was red now. This is bullshit. Mom will never vote against me. Want to call her and find out? The room went quiet. Through the conference room windows, I could see storm clouds building outside, matching the tension inside. My phone rang. Mom's ringtone. Hi, Mom. Dean, I just got off the phone with Margaret Hensley. She told me about Saturday night. I put the phone on speaker. We're all here, Mom. John called a board meeting. Good. I have some things to say. Ruth Parrish's voice carried the authority of someone who'd built this company from nothing. John, are you there? I'm here, Mom. I'm disappointed in you, deeply disappointed. Not just about the affair, but about how you've handled this whole situation. Mom, Dean's trying to destroy me because you made terrible choices. I've been reviewing the company books this morning. The material substitutions, the inflated billing, the missed deadlines. This isn't about your personal life, John. This is about your professional incompetence. The silence stretched out. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. I'm voting to remove you as a partner, Mom continued. You'll retain your ownership shares, but you're out of daily operations effective immediately. John slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing it to you. You did it to yourself. What about Dean? He's the one who sabotaged the charity gala. Dean exposed your theft of charity funds. There's a difference. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. 3 votes. John was out. The motion passes, Carl said formally. John Parrish is removed from operational control of Parrish Power and Lighting. John looked around the room at all of us, his face cycling through anger, disbelief, and finally resignation. This isn't over, he said, grabbing his jacket. Yes, it is, I replied. Security will escort you out. After John left, the office felt different. Lighter somehow, like a storm had passed. What now? Carl asked. Now we fix the messes he made and get back to running a proper business. Mary raised her hand tentatively. What about the clients he overcharged? We make it right. Full refunds for the material substitutions, completion bonuses for the delayed projects. That's going to cost us, Carl warned. Less than losing our reputation would cost us. I spent the rest of the day calling clients, explaining the situation, and arranging compensation. It wasn't fun, but it was necessary. By 6 p.m., I'd turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of integrity. When I got home, Beth's car wasn't in the driveway. The girls were at their friend Sarah's house for dinner, so I had the place to myself. I made a sandwich and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the storm that was finally breaking. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder that shook the windows. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won, but this isn't over. Jay, I typed back. It's over when I say it's over. The response came immediately. We'll see about that. I set the phone down and took another bite of my sandwich. John was angry, desperate, and probably planning something stupid. But I'd been planning too, and I was just getting started. In electrical work, the real damage doesn't come from the initial short circuit. It comes from the cascading failures that follow when the system tries to compensate. John had caused the short circuit. Now I was going to let the system burn itself down around him. The storm outside was just beginning. The one I was about to unleash would make it look like a light drizzle. The next morning brought news that John had been busy overnight. I arrived at the office to find Mary in tears and Carl looking like he wanted to punch something. "What happened?" I asked. "John filed a lawsuit," Carl said, handing me a stack of papers. "Wrongful termination, breach of partnership agreement, and defamation." I scanned the documents. "He's claiming I fabricated evidence against him?" "Gets better. He's also filed for a restraining order against you, claiming you threatened him." "When did I threaten him?" "According to this, during yesterday's board meeting." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He's desperate." "There's more," Mary said, wiping her eyes. "He called 3 of our biggest clients this morning, told them the company was in financial trouble and they should consider switching contractors." "Did any of them bite?" "Henderson Construction is reviewing their contract with us. They're worried about the material substitution issue." I sat down heavily in my chair. John was trying to burn the whole company down rather than accept defeat gracefully. "Okay," I said. "If he wants to play dirty, we'll play dirty. Mary, get me Henderson on the phone. Joanne, I need you to pull every communication John had with clients over the past year. Carl, call our lawyer." "What are you thinking?" Carl asked. "I'm thinking it's time to show John what real warfare looks like." The Henderson call went better than expected. I explained the situation honestly, offered a 20% discount on their current project, and promised personal oversight of all work. They agreed to stick with us. The other 2 clients John had called were harder to convince, but by noon I'd managed to keep their business through a combination of price concessions and service guarantees. Then I started my counterattack. The first thing I did was call every supplier John had relationships with. I explained that he was no longer with the company and that any future orders needed to go through me or Carl. 3 of them mentioned that John had been asking about starting his own contracting business. The second thing I did was review every project John had supervised in the past 2 years. What I found was a pattern of corner cutting, delayed deliveries, and client complaints that had been covered up rather than addressed. The third thing I did was call my lawyer. "John's lawsuit is nuisance litigation," Attorney Williams told me. "He doesn't have grounds for wrongful termination since he was removed by proper board vote for cause. The restraining order request is even weaker." "What about the defamation claim?" "Truth is an absolute defense. If you can prove he actually substituted materials and overcharged clients, he can't claim defamation." "I can prove it." "Then we'll file a countersuit for breach of fiduciary duty and seek damages for the harm he's caused the company." That evening, I was working late in my office when the lights flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie shadows across the office. Through the windows, I could see that the whole business district was dark. My phone rang. The caller ID showed the city's emergency services number. "Mr. Parrish? This is Fire Chief Morrison. We have a situation at the West Side substation. Looks like sabotage." "Sabotage?" "Someone cut through the main transmission lines with professional equipment. The damage is extensive." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Any witnesses?" Security cameras caught a white Mercedes leaving the area around the time the power went out. License plate matches a vehicle registered to John Parrish. I closed my eyes. "I'll be right there." The substation looked like a war zone. Thick copper cables had been severed with industrial cutters, insulators were smashed, and control panels were destroyed. The damage would take weeks to repair and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. "This wasn't random vandalism," Chief Morrison said. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." "Yeah," I said. "They did." The police were already looking for John, but his Mercedes was found abandoned at the airport. He'd apparently caught a flight to Miami using a credit card that was about to be frozen by his pending divorce proceedings. I got home around 2 a.m. to find Beth waiting in the living room. She looked terrible, No makeup, hair disheveled, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did John really sabotage the power station?" "Looks like it. He called me tonight. Said he was leaving town, that you'd destroyed his life." "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped covering for his mistakes." She was quiet for a long moment. "He asked me to go with him. Are you going to?" "No." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I know you don't believe this, but I do love you, Dean. What I did was stupid and selfish and wrong, but I love you." "Love isn't enough anymore, Beth." "I know." We sat in silence, two people who'd shared 17 years trying to figure out how to say goodbye. "The divorce papers are ready," I said finally. "You can have the house until the girls graduate. After that, we'll sell it and split the proceeds." "What about the business?" "What about it?" "John owns 30%. John's going to prison for sabotage, and probably won't be in a position to exercise his ownership rights for several years." She nodded. "And us?" "There is no us anymore." The next morning brought news that John had been arrested at Miami International Airport trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. Apparently, running from a federal sabotage charge while carrying $50,000 in cash raises red flags with airport security. The local news picked up the story by noon. Local businessman arrested in power grid sabotage. By evening, it was the lead story on 3 different channels. I spent the day fielding calls from reporters, clients, and curious neighbors. The general consensus seemed to be that John had lost his mind and I was the victim of his breakdown, which technically was true. The girls took the news about their uncle's arrest better than I expected. They were more concerned about the divorce and what it meant for their daily lives. "Will we still live here?" Bea asked over dinner. "Yes, at least until you both graduate high school." "Will Mom be okay?" That was harder to answer. "Your mom will figure things out. She's stronger than she looks." "Will Uncle John go to jail?" "Probably." Bree pushed food around her plate. "This is all really messed up." "Yeah," I agreed. "It is." 3 weeks later, I was in my office when Mary buzzed me on the intercom. "Dean, there's someone here to see you." "Who is it?" "Beth." I hesitated. We'd barely spoken since the night John was arrested. The divorce proceedings were moving forward through lawyers. "Send her in." Beth looked different. She'd cut her hair shorter and was wearing jeans instead of her usual designer outfits. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman I'd married 20 years ago. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I wanted to tell you that I'm moving to Atlanta. My sister offered me a job at her marketing firm." "What about the girls?" "They'll stay with you during the school year. I'll have them for holidays and summers if that's okay." I nodded. It was more than okay. It was what I'd hoped for. "I also wanted to apologize," she continued, "not just for the affair, but for everything. For taking you for granted, for spending money we didn't have, for caring more about what other people thought than what you needed." "Beth, let me finish. You're a good man, Dean. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope someday you find someone who appreciates what you have to offer." She set an envelope on my desk. The divorce papers. I signed everything. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out at the city skyline. The West Side substation was back online, the company was stronger than ever, and John was awaiting trial in federal prison. I'd won. So why didn't it feel like victory? My phone buzzed with a text from Bea. "Dad, Bree and I want to take you out for dinner tonight. Our treat." I smiled and typed back, "It's a date." Maybe victory wasn't about destroying your enemies. Maybe it was about protecting the people you loved and building something better from the wreckage. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled in the gathering dusk, powered by the electrical grid I'd helped build and maintain. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new problems to solve, new circuits to wire. But tonight, I was having dinner with my daughters, and that felt like the most important job in the world. 6 months later, John was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for infrastructure sabotage. Beth's divorce was finalized, and she seemed to be doing well in Atlanta. The girls were adjusting to their new normal with remarkable resilience. As for me, I was learning to be a single father and running a business that was more successful than ever. We'd landed several major contracts, hired new employees, and even won a community service award for our pro bono work with local charities. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening, as I was locking up the office, Carl stopped by my door. "You know, I never asked," he said. "How did you know John would self-destruct like that?" I thought about it. I didn't know he'd go as far as sabotage, but I knew he'd do something desperate. How? Because John never learned the difference between being smart and being clever. Smart is building something that lasts. Clever is finding shortcuts that eventually catch up with you. Carl nodded. And Beth? Beth got caught up in John's version of clever. She thought she could have everything without consequences. Any regrets? I looked around the office, at the awards on the walls, the photos of completed projects, the evidence of honest work done well. "Just one," I said. "I regret that it took me so long to stop enabling them." As I drove home that night, I thought about the electrical principles that governed both my work and, apparently, my life. Every circuit needs proper grounding to function safely. When the ground is compromised, the whole system becomes dangerous. For years, I'd been the ground wire for my family, absorbing the excess energy, preventing dangerous surges, keeping everything stable. But ground wires aren't supposed to carry the load indefinitely. Eventually, they burn out. I'd finally learned to let the circuit breakers do their job. At home, the girls were doing homework at the kitchen table. Bea looked up as I walked in. "How was work, Dad?" "Good," I said. "Really good." And for the first time in years, I meant it completely.